Hello, everyone, and welcome to Contact Lost, the Polish podcast about Warhammer 40k and the competitive scene in Poland and abroad. With me today, I have two fantastic guests as usual. The first one, our staple Joker,
Hi guys.
and our second guest is the sworn enemy of the Space Marines, a guy who is our local referee, a guy who owns, I think, about 7 armies now, a guy who travels to GTs and is a referee in our own GT in Gdynia, in Tree City as well. Please welcome Elth.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me today. Thanks for the invitation, Tweak and Joker.
Our pleasure, really our pleasure. So, in today's episode, we are going to talk about a topic. I think we're not too late with that topic. It's never too late to talk about the missions. So we are going to talk about the secondaries and how to pick them, what's the reasoning behind them, which are good, which are bad, and for which army. Generally, Joker is a player with a background of playing a couple of armies. He specializes in, correct me, Joker, if I'm wrong, generally Chaos and Demons. Knights and Chaos Knights, Thousand Suns, Necrons recently. Anything else that I missed?
No, the only error you made was in saying that I specialize in these.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I mean, you have some experience. And to add to that, I think you have some experience playing Tau, because I remember you playing Tau once
Not
or
in
twice.
ninth, unfortunately.
Not in ninth, okay. Right. But that's still quite a lot. And then Elth, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but from my observation and me knowing you for a while, again, Chaos, Knights, Sisters, is that safe to say?
No, in theory only,
Yeah,
to be
okay.
honest.
So theory crafting has its value as well. So Sisters, Death Guard,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Any
Uh,
other armies that you feel comfortable with?
Chaos Knights, CSM, as you said, Chaos. I don't play Chaos as a whole because I don't like the Demon army. The only thing I like about demons are Nurglings. So I play generally. CSM is my main army. As a secondary, I would pick Death Guard. Then Knights and Chaos Knights on the third place.
Right, but I also think that there are some Eldar that dwell in your wardrobe. Is that correct?
Yes, I have a reasonable amount of points in Elder Army.
Yeah, the
sitting-
majority of those probably were mine anyway. So
yes.
yeah, right. But you also have some. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I for some obscure reason I thought you have some experience playing guard.
As a addition to Knight Army.
All right. Okay. Yeah, but
And
it's still guard.
so the same thing is with Admech.
Right.
They were a second detachment in Knight's army.
Oh yeah, of course, because you've played the Castellan list back in the 80s,
Yeah, I
right?
did.
Yeah,
When
the
it was
list.
utterly broken, yes.
Okay, all right. Yeah, but that's a fair bit of experience. And then myself, so Tweak, your faithful host, I now play the Grey Knights, but the people who know me also know that I cannot stick to an army for more than 2 years, so I change armies pretty often. So in my portfolio, I also have the Orcs, Dark Eldar, Harlequins. I know a fair bit about Custodes, and I think that's it. So I
Corn
think
demons.
oh, Corn Demon. Oh, and demons in general. Yeah, that too. And Corn Demonkin in 7th. So yeah, a fair bit. So I think the three of us have a fairly good coverage of the armies. That's why I think we can discuss those secondary missions comfortably. And yeah, I guess we can move on. So I'll go with the first question, and the first question is the basis for that is, I guess, the sentiment to what we've been doing in the last couple of editions. So Maelstorm cards, these are gone now. GW has tried tinkering with them. They did some tweaks and fine tuning at the end of 8 with mulligans and stuff like that. So you could pick cards, you could throw away cards, you could add cards to your hand, and so on and so on. Do you think that dropping that idea and going into sort of ITC style missions is the right way to go, Elf? What do you think?
There's a special place in hell for them, so Let them rest in peace. In
So that's a
pieces.
relief for you.
Yeah, because cards as being a random element of this game, which is all random, added another part of uncertainty to what am I doing there.
Yeah, right.
You couldn't rely on them. With those tweaks at the end of the 8, they were more playable. But earlier, when you had your set of cards and you could end up winning the game on the board, but losing in points because the cards won't go your way.
Yeah,
And if
true.
you haven't tabled the opponent, you could lose.
So you could only partially plan for what you
Yes.
were going to do.
Yes. There was no plan. Yeah? You had like 36 of them, if I'm
Ish, yeah.
ish. So in a standard mission, you were playing like 15 to 20 of them if you were doing them regularly turn by turn, and if you draw cards that were not doable, then what? Spend CPs or any other abilities to throw them away, but you were stuck. Essentially, you were stuck. You were not making points, and you were losing the game because of cards, not because of how you played.
Not because of your skill, etc. Yeah.
Yes, and how smart your list was built. You were just
Okay.
losing because of the deck of cards.
Okay. So yeah, your position on that is pretty clear. Joker, how do you feel about going away from cards and moving to ITC style missions?
I agree with Elth. I mean, yeah, exactly like he said. At the end of 8th, it was fairly manageable, let's say. But you could, even if you have an army that controls the board really well, you could always get the odd draw at the first turn where you get 2 defense in your opponent's deployment zone, and you're practically starting the game on the back foot then. So yeah, I'm all for it. Go to hell.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I think that there was a lot of potential in the cards, and especially with also those faction cards that, I bought those for pretty much every single army that I had. And then I regretted that because those were like the worst cards that you could possibly have. Most of them either undoable or, they were so bad that the majority of tournament organizers didn't even allow them at tournaments. So you had to play the generic rulebook cards. But I think, so much could have been done with them. If G-dubs really just looked at the cards, the ones that people never choose, like, I don't know, Domination, probably. I can't recall trying to do Domination ever with cards, and just removing them and adding something, I don't know, more fluffy or more competitive or more challenging. It could have been nice.
On the other hand, the faction-specific cards for my armies, like Knights, Chaos Knights, or CSM, were very easy to do. They were like exactly what you want to do with those armies on the field. So when you have selected or draw one of those cards, it was a 100% score. That's why this is another point that leads us to the conclusion that it's good they are gone, because for your armies they were undoable. For my armies they were very easy to do.
So, okay, I guess we're pretty clear on being happy to say farewell to the card. So let us go through the new secondaries, or the new missions that we have. But before we do, can one of you, Elf, maybe you, could you tell us how do you score points now? How do players score points in the new missions? If there is anyone listening to us who hasn't played a tournament yet, or is just getting into the 9th edition and is about to play his first or second or maybe third game, and it's still unclear. What are primaries? What are secondaries? How do you score points?
Okay, it's in general we have 100 points per game available to gain. We get 10 points for painting and YZ big. We leave it for now, and we have 45 point maximum from the primary missions, which are basically controlling the points on the map. And you can gain from 0 to 15 points per turn, and with a cap of 45. Before the battle, a player can choose 3 different secondary objectives from groups given in Grand Tournament chapter approved. We have a cap of 15 points for each of them. So we have 3 objectives with a cap of 15, which leads us to a 45 cap on secondaries, summarizing all to 90 points, excluding painting. That's the scoring system in short.
So these come in categories, and just to be precise, you can choose the maximum of 1 from each category, right? So we have
Yes.
like Battlefield Supremacy, we have No Mercy, No Respite, and all the others. And so 1 from each. You cannot take more than 1 from each of those categories.
Yes, and you choose 3, maximum 1 from each category, and every mission has its own secondary objective. But as far as I know, we won't be covering those right now. Yeah. So summarizing: painting 10 points, primary objectives, which means controlling points, are 45 points, and 3 15 points secondaries.
Okay. Joker, your opinion on the 10 points for a painted army. Is that something that we always wanted? Because especially in Tree City, so where we are, we used to award people for having beautiful armies. We used to also support those artistic tables and so on. So is this a dream come true, or is it actually breaking the game now?
I think it doesn't make any difference really, because at the end of the day, when we're organizing a GT, everyone has to have a painted army. So everyone gets the extra 10 points to each of their games, which means that nobody gains those points because they don't make any difference if everyone gets them. And on local tournaments, I mean, we usually allow both proxies or unpainted models because obviously people want to test things before buying and so on and so forth. So for me, it doesn't really change much. It doesn't really have a sensible impact on the scoring.
All right, Elf, your opinion?
Yeah, I agree with the first part that they are meaningless on bigger tournaments because everyone gets that because you have to have a painted army to be on a given tournament. But on the local area, I think there shouldn't be any reward which can change the result of a match. Because
Or the whole tournament?
It means the whole tournament, because if you are getting 30 points from painting, because most common amount of battles are 3 on our tournaments, so you are getting like 30% of one battle.
Yeah,
this is a lot. And with majority of battles ending with results like 40 to 70 or 30 to 60 points, those are the results. It will drastically change the outcome of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So we just skip this rule. We're not using them.
So do we skip it because of that, or do we skip it because none of your armies are painted?
It's the latter. It's the latter. I organize tournaments. My armies aren't fully painted. I'm not giving anyone those points.
Exactly. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Okay, guys.
No, we are giving some other benefits for those who bring painted armies. Don't you remember, like extra CP point in the first and the second turn from the last tournament, for example? If you have a YZ week, 100% on your army, you get 1 command point in the first turn, and if you have a fully painted army, you get a second command point in the second round.
Or actual additional points at the end of the tournament, where we're using the 20-0 WTC scoring system, and then like at the end you add 3 or 5 points to the guys that had full WYSIWYG and fully painted armies, and people that hadn't have that don't get those points. So I mean, it's not like painting isn't rewarded, because it should be in a way. I mean, it's part of the hobby, but not necessarily in the way GW has proposed it. I mean, at least I'm not a fan.
We have to separate the hobby from the sport, yeah, because in my opinion, when you go to the tournament, you are going into a competition where your brain counts. Yes, how have you built your list? How are you playing? How are you using utilities you have at your disposal? And and we have to separate it from how good painter you are, or how much money have you invested in painting of your army. Those are two separate things, in my opinion.
So yeah, your paint job doesn't define how well you play. That's what you're
Yes.
trying to say. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So painting and scoring for painting, I think, you know, this could be a completely separate episode because there are as many opinions as there are players. So let's leave that for now. I would like us to go through the secondaries from the GT book now. And what we're going to do, what my intention is to look at each and every single one of those secondary missions that we have in the GT pack. And I would like us to think of the pros, the cons of each of them, and then also like to give your thoughts and perspective, taking into considerations the armies that you play, let's say, the most often. So I think we can jump right into it, and we can start with the first category, which is battlefield supremacy. So the first one in battlefield supremacy would be engage on all fronts. So again, to those who don't know, you can score 2 victory points at the end of your turn if you have 1 or more units from your army wholly within 3 different table quarters. And an important point to mention, thing that I've noticed people forget, those units need to be more than 6 inches away from the center of the battlefield. So you get 2 points for being in through 3 quarters, and then you can get 3 points when you are in all 4 quarters, respecting that rule that you cannot be 6 inches from the middle. So what do you guys think about that? Joker, let's start with you. What do you think about the mission? Do you choose it? Do you skip it? What do you think?
I choose it. I'm loving it. It's
Okay.
one of my favorites. I mean, although in ninth, I've mostly been playing armies that consist of not many units, but of big dudes. I usually have enough cheap chaff that I can get at least, the 3 table quarters quite easily, and gives me a stable amount of points.
Yeah, 10.
10 at least.
Yeah,
Sometimes more.
with a cap of 15.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you're going for the minimum. What I would like to say about this secondary objective is that it is broken because it is not weighted enough. It should be 3 and 4, not 2 and 3 points. This is first what I think that I wanted to say about it, and the second is that I am using it if I have to. When taking into consideration how the battlefield looks, what I have at my disposal, what the opponent has at his, it is I play this, but only if I have to, if none other are viable.
Okay, that's an interesting approach, and I think that the next question that I'm going to ask is going to be, a prevalent question throughout the whole interview that we do. But what Joker said, and what I observe people doing, like I played Lipa, so like a player from Tree City who usually plays Space Marines, and he has like very good ideas on how to play the missions and how to play his armies. He builds the army specifically to do a task. So his list is tailored to missions. So for example, for engage all fronts or scramblers that we're going to get to, he has servitors in his army, like 2 units of servitors, bare bones, cheap servitors that appear, score, and disappear, basically. What you've just said, Elf, is or seems to be contrary. So you don't seem to be building a list for a particular mission. It's just you build a list and then you see what that list can do against a particular opponent on a particular table. Am I understanding that right?
No, you are not.
Okay.
It's two separate things. I build my list to cover two of the secondaries. So I pick
Elaborate.
from the whole list of secondaries, I pick two of them, and my list is tailored to do those two secondaries for max points. And the third one, I leave myself a freedom to choose in before the battle when I see my opponent's army.
Yeah. Now, when you say it like that, I think I do something similar. So I try
Because
to plan. Mhm.
yeah, we have some wonderful secondaries like Abhor the Witch,
We'll get to that.
which I can use against you. Yeah, but we will get to the tactics. So let's
Yeah.
jump to Linebreaker and because we are going off topic again.
That happens often, but still, engage on all fronts. I guess that's one of the most often taken secondary out there. It's fairly easy to score. It rewards you with points.
Yes, but it's very hard to max.
Yeah, but you said that you think it's badly scored. I
Weighted.
mean, yeah, weighted. So it should be like 3 and 4. Why?
Because it is very hard to max. That's why.
But I mean, is it a secondary
I
that you
disagree
should?
with that.
Okay.
Because whilst it might be hard to max, it's fairly easy to do still. Because I mean, there's almost no risk, and you're probably still going to get at least 10 points with a possibility of getting all 15. And if you'd up the number of points that you get for the conditions that you meet, you'd max it every time fairly easily. So that's I don't think that's how it should be.
So is getting 10 points out of engage on all fronts actually bad? I would say I'm pretty happy if I get 10 points because 10 points from that, 10 points from another secondary, 10 points from another secondary. That's 30.
Which
Not that bad, I guess.
Which leads us to the whole construction of secondary points made by Games Workshop. There are many of them which are impossible to max at 15 points cap because they, like cut off the head, are 13 points max.
True.
I don't get this philosophy. If we cap something at 15, a player should be able to reach this cap. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
But again, we'll get to cut off the head
Yes.
pretty soon. So yeah, we'll rant about that when we get there. So okay, engage all fronts, pretty self-explanatory. Now, yeah, Linebreaker. So basically, you score 4 victory points at the end of your turn if 2 or more units from your army, excluding aircraft, are wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. That caught me off guard in my first game of 9th because I never read the mission. I thought it was basically the same thing that in 8th. And I was so happy when I dropped my, I don't know, strike squad, I think, into my enemy's deployment zone. I was like, oh, now I'm doing Linebreaker. He was like, nah, you're not, because you need 2 units. And I was like, ah! So, yeah, caught me off guard. But I guess it's a pretty okay mission. Elth, again, your opinion.
And again, we are coming at the list composition because there are armies who will do this fairly easily, and there are armies who, for whom this is unreachable, like Dead Guard, for example. It's very hard to do a Linebreaker with the Dead Guard because I mean a typical Dead Guard list like Plague Marines and stuff, and for an army of Elda. On Shining Spears or any other bikes, it is very easy to do Linebreaker for armies which are heavily using Deep Strike also. And you are putting constant pressure on your enemy with the threat that you will do this secondary. That's wonderful about it. I love this secondary. Because your opponent has to pay attention throughout the whole game that you will be putting units in his deployment zone, maybe not all of them at once, but each turn, and he has to leave a certain amount of force to protect his back. So you are able to make primary easier because he has to stay in his backline.
Joker?
I agree with Elth here. I think I really like this one. Not because I take it and score it easily, but because I think it's well thought through. I mean, you have a high reward getting 4 points each turn, so you don't have to do it every turn to max it out. But well, obviously, you also need to have a fast mobile army or an army that deep strikes, like Elf said, or anything that wants to be in the face of the opponent, which you might want to be in turn 1 anyway. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on it.
So don't you think, because I'm trying to think of a downside for this, and one downside that I see is, but maybe correct me if I'm wrong, some deployments make it fairly easy to deny that, because there is this new deployment, I think, where you start on the short edges, but even though you are on the short edges, they are even smaller than they used to be. Your deployment is smaller, not the whole short edge, but just
Yeah,
part
there
of
is a
it.
mission like that.
Yeah, I think so. And then there is another mission, I think the one where you have like the triangles that are the deployment. You can set your army in such a way, especially with good terrain, you can hide in that terrain and just spread out your army, and you can quite well block your opponent from getting Linebreaker. So I think that could be a negative aspect, or a con of that one. Would you
Yes,
agree?
but partially, because you can very easily blockade deep strikes, but you cannot blockade bikes or Helldrakes or anything that flies and it's not an aircraft.
How often do you see Helldrakes on the table?
Every time you play Elth.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But he's biased. All right, but I guess
I
I
think we
guess you're
have a
right.
renaissance of Helldrakes in 9th, purely of this one secondary objective.
I mean, yeah, okay. They serve their purpose now. So
Yes.
agreed. And the
Thing is
secondary,
trust.
I think what Joker said, that it's a reliable secondary that rewards you well for your efforts, because 4 points is nothing to sniff at. So I think, yeah, it's one worthy of taking. How about Domination? Domination being you score 3 victory points if you control more than half of the total number of objective markers. So if you're playing 6 objectives, you really need to control 4. Is that something that you pick often?
Well, in games of 1,000 points, we have missions where there are 4 objectives.
Right.
In bigger games, we have 6.
Yeah.
So in those smaller games, it is fairly easy to do this. But in those big games, it is very hard to control 4 points. I mean, with a balance, in a balanced play, when we have 2 well-built armies and 2 guys who are using their brains against each other, it's very, very hard to control 4 points in a game. So it is for armies which are fast or numerous, it is an auto pick for smaller games, I think.
Right. So let's pause here for a second, because I think our listeners deserve to know Elth is a player that plays, I would say, extremes. And by that I mean, if he plays CSM, his typical CSM list would include about 190 cultists, and then maybe some HQs,
Only
and some
maybe.
Havoc. Only maybe, and some Havocs. Yeah, because I was inclined to say that he plays a CSM list without any CSM, but that wouldn't be fair because he has Havocs and he has some HQs. So yeah. And on the other end of the spectrum, he has his army of knights. So again, 4 or 5 huge models. So a complete opposite. So yeah, so he knows what he's talking about when he says that armies with plenty of models can score this fairly reliably. especially that when you have 190 cultists, you really have to think of them as 220 because one unit can come back on the table. So yeah, so domination is something that army probably can do. Joker, I think you tried doing domination a couple of times. I remember at tournaments. How did that work for you?
Yeah, but I did that in a tournament of 1,000 points, just like Elf said, because the missions there had the objectives layout of 1 in each player's deployment zone and 2 in the middle of the board. So that was fairly doable to max it out. And domination is one that I would say what Elf said about engage on all fronts. I think this would be okay to be valued at 4 points per turn, because in the missions for 2,000 points, the strike force missions, I think it's quite tough to do it, especially every turn to max it out.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just skip it completely with my elite, Grey Knights army. I just
yeah,
never assume I'm going to control that many objectives.
it's a no-go for you.
I mean, I would only score that if I manage to completely wipe my enemy off the table. But then if I do that, I could pick any mission and I would probably max it out. So I don't have to go with domination to get that, which is, dubious that I would actually manage to score it. So I completely skip it. Like I ignore it when I look at missions because it's just not for me. Maybe with orcs back in the day, especially if I build a list around I don't know 120 boys or 150 boys, perhaps I would give it a think. But with an
No.
elite army, I think there are many more, or many better secondaries to choose from.
Yes, and in those big games, it is undoable. It is really undoable to max it out, even to score it reliably. It's undoable because you have such amount of units on the board that your opponent will be able to deny you these points. It's
Pretty much.
It's very easy, pretty much, yes. Even if you have a swarm of brimstone horrors, of orcs or chaos cultists or guardsmen, your opponent will still just have to really shoot down one of your units, and you're not scoring it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe on a table, if you play the table that has a lot of terrain and a table that treats forests the way WTC apparently treats them. So WTC, as far as I know, plays in that way that forests also obscure. If you play like that, and the table is like pretty full of that terrain, then perhaps horde armies could try and do that because really just charging into something that is on an objective with like orc boys who have objective secured, it might be the way to go. But on the other hand, there are so many armies now that have indirect shooting that they would probably be able to do away with that threat anyway.
The only thing that saves this secondary is that it is scored at the end of your turn. This is one thing we haven't said at the beginning of the secondary objectives list, that we have basically 2 times when you score them. You score them either at the end of your turn or at the end of the next command phase. So Domination, Linebreaker, and Engage on all fronts are all scored at the end of your turn. So it's up to you to figure out how to make them. And this is the only thing that saves this domination objective in the bigger games.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Good remark. Okay, moving on to No Mercy, No Respite. So first one on the list, thin their ranks. So basically how this works is that you need to keep a tally of the kill points, and each time an enemy model is destroyed, you get like 1 point to your tally, and 10 if you kill something bigger, like something that has, I think, 10 wounds or more. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to say that from my memory. And then you basically check at the end of the game what the tally is, and you divide it by 10, and that's the amount of victory points that you've scored. Is that about right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Right. So I can tell you straight off the bat that I hate it. I hate it because I'm a lazy bum and I can't be bothered, keeping a tally of anything. So again, that's the one that I would probably skip.
I hope you agree with me, but that this is only this can be only taken against my army of cultists when I have 200 of them. This is only then viable for taking, because in a normal game when you have like 60-70 max models in your army, even if you will table the opponent, you will get like 7 points.
Yeah, Misty 7. Just not worth it.
And in the understanding of this objective rule, a knight, which has 24 wounds and is a beast, which is hard to kill, is worth 10 cultists in points.
Yeah.
This is stupid. This is just stupid. You don't get any bonus for killing bigger things, but we have other secondaries for it. So this would be an auto pick for fighting a really big horde army when you
Yep.
have the potential to shoot them out.
Yeah, but to be honest, I find that I don't know, it's probably just me, and pro players don't have that problem. But to me, the sheer logistics, the sheer logistics aspect of keeping a tally of something, and then making sure that you calculated that correctly at the end of the game, especially if it's like a team tournament and your team is counting on every single point that you can bring, etc. There's a lot of pressure. You can make a mistake. To me, it's a no-go. It just seems like too much hassle to keep track of all this.
You
But
don't
I
have
don't
to.
know. Maybe
You
it's
don't.
it's
You
just
don't
me.
have to keep track of it. You just at the end of the last game, but last battle round, you just ask your opponent, "What have I killed you?" He shows you the dead models, and you have the count.
Yeah. So every single time when I have to go to my opponent and ask, "Dude, what's my score?" I think that's a bad secondary.
It is a bad secondary. Yes, it's very limited in choosing.
Yeah. Moving on. So grind them down. Score 3 victory points at the end of the battle round if more enemy units than friendly units were destroyed this battle round. Good one, bad one. Joker, what do you think?
I think it's quite good. It's one of the few things you can have going for yourself if you go second, because at that point you need to you already know how much you need to kill, because this is scored at the end of the battle round and not at the end of the turn, unlike most of the secondaries, I would say. So if you play an army that consists of a few elite units, that's definitely something you might want to consider.
But it has a downside again, I think. And the downside is if you're going first and you choose that, and then your opponent knows exactly what you've just said. Your opponent knows exactly how much or how many units he needs to kill to deny you that. So let's say you kill one, he knows that he just needs to kill two, which isn't really a big of a challenge.
He actually needs to only kill one, because you have to kill more.
Yeah, you see, so it gets worse. If you go first and you kill two, again, he just needs to kill two, and the majority of armies, I guess, don't have a real problem with that, and you don't want to be hiding all game. So if you choose that one and you go first, you actually risk that your opponent is going to just deny this very easily. So I tend to take that from time to time, but again, I wouldn't say that it is a reliable way of scoring points. Just because if you go first and your opponent is more killy than you, and you're playing like this, I don't know, waiting game or resiliency game where you think that you're going to outlast your enemy or something, it can bite you in the ass, I think.
Again, but I think
Yes.
that when you're playing someone that has a lot more units than you do, it's definitely worth considering. Like when I was playing Tau, the one game against Tau, I had a 9th. There were so many units of 2 drones. I would reliably get grind them down every turn with ease.
Yeah, so if you're playing an army that has like a lot of squishy units, then probably yes. And if you can reach them fairly easily, like I don't know, you're playing something that has artillery, could be Space Marines, could be Guard, and you know that or you see that your opponent has, I don't know, Kabbalite warriors, and they are, for some obscure reason, they are not in Venoms because maybe they want to be scoring scramblers or whatever else, like
The Venom
banners,
died.
or the Venom died, yeah. Then yeah, then I guess you can assume you're going to score more than your opponent has because you're more resilient, you're far away, you ignore line of sight, so you have a lot of advantages. But if you play an army that is squishy, yeah, your opponent probably is going to abuse that and deny you that.
Guys, it is an auto pick for a knight army. You have 3, 4, 5 models on the table. And then you can easily score this, because if you are losing knights, then that means you are losing the game. That's why it
Very
is
much
an
so,
auto.
yeah.
It's an auto pick for knights army. Because
Okay.
in every turn you will be killing more than your opponent will.
Yeah,
He will
that's
kill
true.
you. He will kill you, one of your knights. You will kill 2, 3 of his units easily.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I wanted to say in a perfect
I
scenario, but it doesn't really have to be a perfect scenario. That's probably how the majority of the games go.
Yeah, and it is worth considering for elite armies like Custodes or Euro Grey Knights. It is worth considering when you're, as you said, playing a shitty army like God or TSM on Cultist.
I never said shitty, but yeah, that's your interpretation. But yeah, okay, I think we covered this one fairly well. So let's look at the last one from this category, which is while we stand we fight. So to those of you who don't know what that is, you basically nominate 3 of your most expensive units before the battle.
Models,
Yes,
not
sorry,
units.
sorry. Yeah, I just, the majority of objectives talk about units, so I just went with units. But yes, that's correct. So you pick 3 of your most expensive models, and these basically need to survive until the end of the game. And if you manage to do that, or yeah, for every model that survives out of the 3, you score 5 victory points to a maximum of 15 for all 3. So again, guys, something that you like to choose or something that you avoid, and why? Elf.
Depends on the list again. When I'm playing a swarm of cultists with few characters, it is an auto pick, because you have to grind through those cultists to reach my characters. So it is easy to do, because you won't. You just won't kill off all the cultists to get to characters. And if you are playing an elite army when the models in your army are few, it is stupid to take this objective, because it is fairly easy to kill those respective models by your opponent. He knows which ones he has to target, and if you don't have enough cover for them, they will be dead like turn 3.
Joker?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, this objective is, I think, a perfect example that you need to have your list built to be able to score it reliably. I mean, from the games I've been playing in 9th, where I've usually been playing either knights or recently some of the greater demons, I mean, I'm bound to lose 3 of the most expensive models in the army every game. So it's just, I never take it. Like I've said, elite army just doesn't cut it. But yeah, his example of the characters is a good one. I think a good example of this one is also from the list that we discussed last week with Arek, where the most expensive models are the Plague-Beast Crawlers, which are ridiculously durable, but the defilers that like walk in front of them are much bigger of a threat and also durable, so the enemy needs to focus on them, and the crawlers are then much more likely to survive. and score you 15 points.
Yeah, that's a really good list, and that's a really good secondary for them. I used to be in love with this secondary with my Grey Knights because usually at least two of those are Drago and Voldus because they are like 190 and 160 respectively. But then I observed that I like the baby carriers too much, and I try to include at least one in my list. And then I tend to play with that baby carrier quite aggressively. So that would probably be one of the first units that I would gate to my opponent's deployment zone to wreak havoc and, cast some spells and then shoot and hopefully charge.
And die in
But
the name of
that's
Emperor.
that's where I was going. So that model will probably die fairly easily, even if I use Heed the Prognostic cards with like 3+ inbound save. It's probably going down turn 1. So for 235 points, being the most expensive model, on the battlefield, knowing that it's going to die fairly quickly, I really struggle with while we stand, we fight. So I tried, tinkering and toying with a list that doesn't consist of, that doesn't include a baby carrier, and then it would be another character or maybe a venerable dreadnought. And then I observed that yes, it is much easier to achieve, but still the love for baby carriers just makes me choose something else. I think we can move on. I think we can move on to the next category, which is Purge the Enemy. And in that one, we have the first one called Titan Hunter. So what this does, it basically allows you to score 10 victory points at the end of the battle if one enemy Titanic model is destroyed. 12 points, if I remember correctly, if you kill 2. And then 15 if you kill 3 or more. How do you feel about this one? I know that both of you own knights, both of you play knights. So is that something that people treat as an auto pick when they play against you? And is this something that you automatically pick when you play knights? Or not really?
Well, it's self-explanatory. You take this one only when facing knights.
And every time you face them.
And every time you face them. Because when you are facing an army which consists of 3 to 5 big models, the only thing you have to do is just kill them. And you won. That's all.
And that's what you want to do anyway, I guess. So
yes, because if you won't kill them, you will lose. So it is an auto pick.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it gives you the maximum amount of points, which is super important. And yeah, pretty much. You need to kill those knights anyway. And it's the only thing that's doing something in your opponent's army. So
yeah, so back at the beginning of 9th, when it was introduced and the missions were first presented, I looked at this one and I came to the conclusion that this one and I think Abhor the Witch are the ones that I strongly dislike and disapprove of. And this is mainly because, yes, they are auto picks. And I don't think any of the missions that are there, any secondary, or actually none of the secondary should be an auto pick. There should be some thinking involved, some planning involved, some tactics. And with this one, if you play knight, you just choose it because you know that you're going to score it. Unless, I don't know, your army is, I don't know, pure guardsmen without tanks and you're just going to bounce off them or something, or maybe kill one tops. But you don't see those armies, so this is never going to happen. So yeah, this is an auto pick for pretty much anyone. And as I said, Abhor the Witch probably the second one, but we will get that there in a moment. So can you think of any way how this could be remade or redone or redesigned to still be interesting but not be a no-brainer that it is now?
To be honest, I think it should be deleted. And the objective about killing vehicles and monsters should be tailored to include killing Titanic units, to give them 5 points for a Titanic unit, or 4 points, because we have 2 and 3 for killing vehicles, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
And this one, Titan Hunter, should be deleted because it is aimed against those armies built around those big models. And it is another another argument that you should not build army in such a way that you take 3 knights to 4 knights. It is a badly built army, as far as I see it in the 9th edition, because you're castrated of any means of denying the opponent getting points, and you don't have enough field coverage to get to acquire points in a 100% knight army.
Which is a pain, because I think many people love that army, many people own that army, and this single objective just makes people, drop it for something else. And the fact that it's like really difficult to have objectives secured and score primaries with just 4 models.
It is impossible in bigger games.
Exactly. So that, yeah, as you said, castrates the army badly, and that's a huge shame. Okay, bring it down. So scored 2 victory points at the end of the battle for each enemy
Can
monster.
I add something to that?
Yeah, of course.
Titan
Yeah, sorry.
Hunter?
Apologies.
I mean, I agree with Elth, although deleting it might be a bit harsh, but still, I mean, I think knights are just so badly punished this edition. It's very hard to do primary objectives, impossible with a pure knight army, like Elf said. But also, they don't benefit from obscuring. They don't benefit from dense cover. They got literally nothing going for them, and a secondary tailored totally against them. And I think no secondary that's a potential auto pick should give max points. That's one thing, which would then not make it not an auto pick, I guess. But also, I mean, it just targets a particular faction so badly. You can't build a knights list not taking so many Titanic models. It's pretty much impossible. I think that if not deleting it, Elf's suggestion to merge it with Bring It Down is very nice. I like it. But if not that, I think that killing 1 knight and 2 knights should be worth less points. You can keep the 15 for free because it does take some dedicated firepower to take them all down, and you're probably winning the game anyway, so why not? But killing 1, I think, shouldn't be worth 10 points already. Should be like, I don't know, maybe 7, maybe 6, and then 10 for 2 and 15 for free. That would make sense, I think. But yeah, disclaimer, that's a pretty subjective opinion because I played them.
So do you think that it is because, yeah, playing pure, either Imperial Knights or Renegade Knights probably, as we said, makes very little sense now. How about mixing them with something else? I know that not many people probably want to do that because if you own 4, you just want to field 4 and not think about any additions. But, have you considered mixing up, I don't know, 1 or 2 maybe with your CSM or with your whatever else you're playing? And would that make sense? And would that then, sort of take away the pain that stems from this particular secondary objective?
In short words, no. because when you are taking a super heavy detachment, you have to promote one of them as your warlord to receive the command point benefit. And as far as I remember, you have to have 3 questories class knights to get the refund of 6 points. If not, you are 6 points short just for taking this detachment.
Which is another point that adds to the castration of the army.
Yes, so you cannot mix them with anything else because it's pointless now. Just pointless. You are starting the game with an army which is not capable of scoring points. You have an army which, if you mix them with something else, you have a tremendous drop of command points. So all of your stratagems are not usable. And the power of stratagems is tremendous. Those are the game changer, unfortunately, because they are not balanced. And for forbidding yourself this opportunity to use command points by choosing such a army composition is it's not smart, to say it the least.
Yeah, on one hand, I should be happy with the current state of affairs because knights have punished me really badly in 8th, especially with the Castellan, when I played my Dark Eldar. It was a real struggle to play against knight armies with pure Dark Eldar. But to be perfectly honest, if there is any army that suffers like the knights suffer now, I think G-Dubs should do something to make it more, I don't know, even or straightforward for that army to be fielded, to be played, because no army deserves not being, being in that position that you cannot field it and you cannot play it. Especially that I think knights are like
they
almost
are
like
literally unplayable now.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say is that they are like next to Space Marines, they are probably one of the most recognizable models in the whole range of Warhammer 40k. So it's really a shame that they are in a place where players cannot comfortably, put them on the table and enjoy the game with them. So yeah. So I started talking about bring it down. So just to bring order to the discussion, bring it down 2 victory points at the end of the battle for each monster or vehicle that has, I think, 10 wounds or more, or less. Correct me if I'm wrong. And 3 victory points for each vehicle
with 11 or more.
So sorry, yeah. So you get like 2 victory points for anything big that is below 10, and then 3 victory points for anything that is 11 or more.
Yes.
So monster or vehicle. Yeah, I think I got it right this time.
Yes. Yeah,
Again, an auto pick or not.
And this is the one command point. Sorry, secondary objective which you choose when looking at the opponent's army, and that's all. If he has monsters, vehicles in an amount that will give you max, and you are able to kill it, you just take it. If not, then not.
All right. So let's say I have a list that runs 3 rhinos. Would you consider taking that against me then?
Of course not.
Okay, because you cannot max it.
I can do only 6 points.
Yeah, it's not even a matter of maxing it. It's a matter of getting, let's say, at least 10 plus.
Yeah,
which you can't in this scenario. So, well, you can almost certainly find something that will give you more points.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's right.
Good that I'm bringing 3 rhinos then.
Yes. But if you are bringing 3 rhinos and 2 of your baby carriers, and for example, dreadnought.
A dreadnought, yeah.
A dreadnought. It would be, worth considering, because we will have then 13 points, potentially 16 even, so 15 capped.
So I think against that list that Arek talked about last episode, I think that would be something to choose.
Yes,
although I think that in that case, that's one thing. That's that's one objective that you might actually regret choosing.
Yeah,
it seems an auto pick, but grinding through all those wounds is pretty tough.
Yeah, especially that if he plays it, if you don't like stretch him on the table, I think all of those defilers and so on, they have 4+ invul, which is on a vehicle with 10+ wounds that hits like a truck. 4+ invul is just something nightmarish. So
don't forget about the feel no pain on top of that.
Yeah, so the moment I said that, I regretted saying it because no, that list is like really well composed, to be perfectly honest.
On the other hand, you must remember that they have 4+ invul only because there is a character who gives them this. If you have the means to get rid of this guy, you're making yourself the job easier. That's first. Second, when you have an army build around an idea that you will have weapons like missile launchers, which can efficiently kill hordes and armored units, and you have at least one missile launcher in every of your units. I played a list like this. Why not? You have the means, you have the tools.
I'm trying to think what models apart from Talos and Demon Princes are actually some monsters that you see on the tables. What else is there? Yeah, like apart from Talos and apart from Demon Princes, what things that you see on the table have the monster keyword?
Greater demons.
All right,
Although
yeah.
not popular in our area, but yeah, you can see those lists in some of the
Gilman.
RTTs and states or whatever.
Oh yeah, Gilliman. He's a monster. That's true. Literally and figuratively. Anything else? The Chaos Spawn, they are not monsters, right? They're infantry.
No.
They are beasts.
Beasts,
Or they're
yeah.
okay, they're beasts. Even better.
So I think beasts of Nurgle have the monster keyword.
No, they're beasts as well.
It's in the name, right?
Yeah, as the name would imply.
So okay, yeah, so not many, I would say. So it's more about the vehicle part, I think. And if someone is bringing fewer than 3 vehicles, then probably it's not really worth taking.
Yeah, it's not worth it. 9 points, considering those are big vehicles. 9 points. If nothing else is viable, yeah, but
yeah,
but no,
I think
but no.
9 is the number that you might start considering if you can get it reliably.
Yeah, if you know that you can simply pop those 3 rhinos or whatever other vehicle there is on the table. I don't know, like a
3 rhinos won't give you 9.
So
They
yeah,
will
true.
give you only 6.
I think
But,
it's a matter of if you really need to kill them, then perhaps, yeah, and if there isn't anything else that will give you more points, then yeah, why not? Maybe, but yeah, only maybe.
Yeah,
right.
in conjunction with something like grind them down, if you are planning ahead, guy has a lot of vehicles, and you are planning to do grind them down. You mean by killing more of his units than he kills yours. Maybe.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. It's very situational, and that's why it's not an auto pick in any way.
Okay, correct. Last one from this category, cut off the head. So this is
And
basically
this one's stupid.
Last.
Oh yeah, it's not last. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Good that you're yeah.
Not last, but
controlling the situation. But still, I think that's the equivalent of the old Slay the Warlord with some iffy points, as Elth already mentioned. So you get 13 points if you manage to slay the Warlord in the first battle round, and then it drops 10 in the second, 6 in the third, 3 in the fourth, and just 1 point in the fifth. So is there any saving grace for this one?
Yeah,
or
up it by 2.
Meaning what, like 15, 12, 8, 5, and 3?
Yep.
Do you think that people would be inclined to take it more often then?
Yeah, because in the current state, it's rubbish.
True, but I mean, I don't know if upping that by 2 points would change much, in that you can only score 15 if you can reliably kill the enemy's warlord in the first turn. And how often does it happen? I mean, it has to be, I think, even in like not very pro gamer games, you really have to misplay badly to allow that to happen.
Or you have a list
Tailored for killing.
Killing characters. Because most of warlords are characters.
Or your warlord is a knight.
And then you have a problem. But to be honest, it is easier to kill a knight in first round than to kill a character which is dug down in a blob of infantry or in a transport vehicle along with a 9 guys.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. That if you're playing knights again, and one of your knights is a warlord, the risk is pretty high that you're going to lose that knight fairly early, just because of this.
I think even in that scenario, you have Titan Hunter in the same category, and it should be, I mean, at least on the tables we play, it's usually possible to at least hide one knight behind the last block, or just deny part of your opponent's army the line of sight. Or even if you're desperate, you can put it in reserves to just deny the maximum points of your opponent. This is, like, in my opinion, this is probably the worst secondary that you can go to.
Yeah, I mean, it was okay in 8th or 7th, and I think ITC did a good job with including it as part of that. What was it called? Old school, I think.
Yeah, it was old school. You'd
So
have to do Slay the Warlord, Linebreaker, First Strike at some point, and
and last strike.
yeah, I think they added something like that.
Yeah, so in that merry bunch, I think it made perfect sense, and it was a secondary that again could be a challenge, but if you know what you're doing, if you know your army through and through, and you know your opponent's army as well, it could be achievable. Back in the day when Linebreaker was just one unit in your opponent's deployment zone. But just this alone with this table, perfectly skippable, I would say.
Yes,
I don't know anyone who played this and managed to score something reliable on it, from it.
It should have a fixed amount of points for killing your opponent's warlord, in my opinion, no matter which round it is, with a bonus for, I do not know, another character. So again, we have a merging situation like in the previous group. With Titan Hunter being down, you could merge, could have merged Cut Off the Head with Assassinate.
Yeah.
The division is artificial, in my opinion, made by GW.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
trying
that
to.
would be
Mhm,
nice.
sorry.
You just have Assassinate, and then if that character was the Warlord, he's worth 5 points, for example.
Yeah, for example, yes. This would
And
be good.
I was thinking how to improve that Cat of the Head, and again, I came to the same conclusion as you, that probably somehow merged with Assassinate is one option, and then maybe add an additional point or two if that character, or sorry, that warlord was carrying a relic or something like that, just on top to add a little twist, because oftentimes it happens so.
Yeah, but you could just add 1 point for a character carrying a relic, because often warlords do not carry relics. The relics are given to some other characters because of their rules and abilities, and your opponent could pick more relics that would give you more points.
Yeah, so G-dubs, if you're listening, you know what to do.
Yeah, they are.
Here's a nifty hint. No, but in all honesty, and
Come on, we've got
just
50 subscribers. They must be one of them.
yeah, but laugh all you want. We actually, and I want to thank all our listeners, because we actually reached 1,000 viewers, which for me is mind blowing. Like it doesn't mean that we have 1,000 individual listeners, but people actually listen to the podcast 1,000 times, which is awesome, and I thank you for it. And yeah, I'll use this opportunity to ask to subscribe and like us on all our profiles and so on. You could help us grow, help us grow, help us grow.
And I think only about 20 of those were mine, so we're going good.
Yeah, we're doing fine. Okay, so we've mentioned that a couple of times already. So Assassinate could be connected with Cut Off the Head or something, but yeah, Assassinate scores 3 victory points at the end of the battle round for each enemy character model destroyed. Is that one that you would treat as this third one, depending on what your opponent has?
Yes, the same story with bringing down. He has vehicles. You take this. He has a lot of characters. You take this, and of course, if you have the means to kill them.
So would you, because again, I'm looking at this from the side of, let's say a pessimist.
Yep. Tweak. Just allow me to say something.
Yep.
Those two are the secondaries which are not dependent on your list building. So you cannot plan in advance that you will be killing vehicles and characters because you may meet an opponent who has none or few.
Obviously, but I'm looking at assassinate from the point of view of a pessimist, let's say, and how many armies are there that take more than 3 characters?
Eldar.
Probably Eldar.
Necrons.
Yeah. Okay. I take
CSM on bigger points.
I take a lot because for the Grey Knights I think the HQ slot is probably the best one, and you just want as many characters as possible because all characters are good, and you take more characters than you take elites or heavy supports because that's how the codex is built. But as you said, you don't rebuild your army with a view to scoring assassinate as your main secondary. But do you think that maybe the amount of points should be increased for that? Like, because as I said, I think a great majority of armies bring 2 characters, maybe 3. So should this objective, or this mission, give more points than 3 for each kill?
I think GW made a sane choice when writing those secondary objectives. That the conclusion is that you cannot spam a certain type of units, because if you spam a certain type of units, you expose yourself to your opponent to get points on you. Get my point?
Yep.
So your list has to be tailored in such a way that you have few of this, few of that, and without unit spam of characters, troops, like cultist I do, because you are being punished for this. I think that was the thought behind the construction of those secondary.
Joker, anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Not this time.
Yeah,
I think I just agree with you guys.
You're making it simple for me. So moving on to the next category, which is shadow operations, and I think Elth will have a lot to say about that because I think raise the banners high is your staple. It's something that, from my observation, you take in pretty much every single game that you play. So tell us why.
It's pretty obvious. When I play Alpha Legion and I have 9 inches, a 9-inch move before the battle, I'm already at the most of the of points. So I secure them, turn 1, and just raise the banners. And this produces a fair amount of points for me throughout the game, and forces my opponent to attack my least valuable in points units, because 10 cultists just hold this point. They bring out the banner, and they score more than any heavy unit I would bring on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's why you love your cultists so much, I guess.
Yeah, they make 6 points a turn by just standing there, and with the banner, and an additional point at the end of the game, yes, for the banner.
Yep. Joker.
And
yeah, sorry. Finish.
I think every army that utilizes units that can be on the markers despite enemy actions, like scouts,
rangers,
whatever, Nurglings are out because they are not infantry. But anything that is infantry can be set up in the battlefield on the marker should bring up the banners, as it produces points from turn 1 constantly.
Unless someone comes to that objective and has objective secured and then contests it or something like that, then they would remove the banner, because that's how the secondary works.
Yes, but they have to take this point from you, and they have to focus on it.
Yeah,
they have to focus on those shitty units which are standing there and laughing, and your opponent has to split his forces.
Yeah, I mean, it gave me, it made me think when we played each other. You played your Death Guard, and I played my Grey Knights, because I really had to think where I want to drop my strike squads and how. And at some point, I think I chose to drop a strike squad using dynamic insertion, just to be 3 inches from the objective to take it away from you. And then, the shooting and whatever the strike squad did that turn, I think I didn't have command points to utilize them to their full potential, so they just stood there and just denied the point. But it still, I think, was worth it, because at that point you didn't have any banners left. So yeah, so that was something that I like to think I did right. But you really need to work hard to have those banners removed, because you really have to contest. I think you have to have something, either more unit or have objective secured.
You have to counter it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You have to physically arrive 3 inches from the point, from the marker, to take the banner down. So for the armies like Tau or some SM armies, who just stay in the place and shoot, it's a problem, because they have to break their formation and try to take out the banners.
And
There's
you
some
score.
tactics.
Yeah, there are some tactics, especially that I think you score this one at the end of at the beginning of your command phase, right? So it's not end of your turn. You actually have to outlast, or the banner has to outlast.
Yeah, the banner. The action, you have to make an action. That's the problem. So your infantry unit, when setting up the banner, doesn't do anything else.
Yeah, that's what really hurts me when I think about my army, or any elite army, as a matter of fact, because in an elite army, it seems, when I think of it, every single unit has a purpose, and that purpose is not just standing and waiting to be shot off the table. For an elite army that has, I don't know, paladins, terminators, Alarus terminators, what have you, it's really difficult to shift, especially those last ones, or the paladins. But to have them just stand on a point and risk that the enemy is going to unload whatever they have, all their shooting, into that unit, just for them to raise a banner, or for them to deploy scramblers or something like that. Well, it's really painful. And the cheapest unit that I have in my army is 100 points. I mean, strike squad is 100 points. So to invest 100 points and then just have those guys raise a banner or deploy scramblers, yeah, I guess if you know you can do it safely, sure, why not? If you see the table before the game and you see that you can hide that unit, fine. But if the table is plain, if there is little terrain and so on, it's, I think, risky.
Out of curiosity, don't you have servitors in your codex?
Yeah, I actually do, but then I just never take. Maybe I should give it a think, and I should think how to utilize them properly. As I said, Lipa used them quite well, but again, his army wasn't elite, and he was able to bring a lot to the table besides those servitors. And with Grey Knights, I think, when I build the army, I would put the servitors in, then I would start adding up stuff that I want to have, and then I would probably remove the servitors because I would be lacking points for, like, a demon hammer on my apothecary or something like that. So Yeah, tough
Decisions,
decisions.
decisions.
Exactly, exactly. Some tough choices. But overall, I think we all agree this mission is good. This mission is well thought through, and I think many players decide to pick it because almost every single army, if not every army, can make good use of it and can score that reliably.
Yep.
Okay. So let's move to the second one from Shadow Operations, and that would be investigate sites. So again, that's an action for an infantry unit, but it cannot be a character. And I think you do it at the end of your movement phase if you're within 6 inches of the center of the table and there are no enemy models.
Within those 6 inches of that center of the battlefield. Yes.
Mental
And you
shortcut.
finish the action. You finish the action at the end of your turn. Well, it's shit.
Why?
Why? Because it's 3 points. You have to make sure that the center of the table is clear of enemies, which is not easy, especially when somebody knows that you will be doing this. It's like with this. Remember those cards from 8th edition? You had this when there are no enemies, 6 inches from the table center, and
Area denial.
yeah, area denial. Oh yeah, you remember this card. This is a similar objective. It was very hard to do it, to be honest. Remember
it was
those
very hard.
Yes.
Especially that you couldn't score that in the first round, I think. So
Yes, yes. So imagine you have to do this one 5 rounds to get max.
so the entire game, basically.
Yeah, the entire game. And you are sacrificing one infantry unit because they have to do the action, so they do nothing else.
And is this one? Is this mission where you have to do it with the same unit, or can you do it?
No, it can be different units, but still they do nothing.
And your opponent can very easily deny you this because they just need to move up into that center of the battlefield as well.
Yeah, and I think
Done.
again with the philosophy of how ninth is played, everyone wants to be in the middle at some point. So again, that's like the mission is completely against what the philosophy of the game is.
Yeah, it's broken utterly.
Okay, I guess we have a consensus about that. The next one then, deploy scramblers.
Yes,
If
yes.
I'm not mistaken. Right. So that's the one where you need to appear in, or yeah, just perform an action in one of the 3 parts of the table, either in your deployment zone, in no man's land, like 6 inches away from either player's deployment zone, and then in your enemy's deployment zone. What do you think about this one?
It's only 10. That makes it. If you have nothing else to do, nothing better to choose,
then
you can
it's a
take
fairly
it.
reliable 10.
Yeah, then this is a very reliable 10, because in most of occasions you will be able to do it. The only problem with this is that this have to be an infantry unit and can't be a character.
Yeah.
And
So
this is the problem.
so those servitors or any other cheap unit, or
Yeah, you
like a
just
unit.
put them in
Yeah.
reinforcements, and in the second turn you do it in no man's land. In third turn you do it in your opponent's deployment zone. You have 10
So
points.
yeah,
Good for
it's
you.
it is good for you. I mean, it is good if you're playing against an army that you know you have a thin chance of winning. Like let's say you're facing the salamanders list, or something else that you know that is going to be a pain, firstly to kill and secondly to outlast. And then you can choose this, and it completely does not depend on your enemy. and it
Yes.
will give you reliable 10 points. I think that's a very good secondary, to be honest.
Yeah, and you can combine it with Linebreaker.
For example. Joker?
Well, combining with Linebreaker is even better for the next one, theoretically, but we'll get to that. Yeah, I think scramblers are okay. It's a reliable means of getting 10 points, which isn't bad. And I think you can alternate scramblers with raise the banners fairly easily. I mean, depending on the mission, which one is easier to do and which one will get you more points. But it's a good one. I like it.
Yep, same here. Moving on, teleport Homer. So you score 4 victory points each time a unit from your army successfully completes the following action. Again, this is done by infantry unit, so it can be a character, and you can start to perform this action at the end. I'm reading this out now because I can't remember the exact wording. So you can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase if it is wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. This action is completed at the end of your next command phase, provided the unit attempting it is still wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. What do you think about this one? And it's a progressive objective.
You have to have a very tough infantry unit to do it. That's the problem. Because if your opponent realizes that you are doing this action, he will do everything to kill the unit. Because you have to outlast his whole turn. That's the problem with this objective.
To get just 4 points.
To get just 4 points.
Yeah, and you want more. So this means that you would have to be sacrificing a unit every turn, basically.
If you sacrifice the unit, you didn't get any points.
That's
yeah, even
before
worse.
you complete the action.
Even worse.
Even worse. So this is only doable when you are playing a stupid opponent who will leave some ruin or any other loss blocking element of terrain, which allows you to get behind it and just sit there and do points. This is the only possible situation in which you can safely do this secondary.
Yeah, I think the fact that it has to be your opponent's deployment zone makes this difficult. And again, you get just 4 points.
Yes, and you have to tailor your list for it, because you have to have deep strike units or plan in advance that you will suffer command point loss for keeping something in reserves.
Yep. Okay. Moving on to the next category, we have my favorite, so Warcraft. So basically the category that is related to some sort of magic, I guess. So let's go with the first one, the elephant in the room, Abhor the Witch. So you cannot select this secondary objective if your army includes a psyker, which I think is a nice tax. But you score 5 victory points at the end of the battle for each enemy psyker character, and 3 victory points for each other enemy psyker unit that is destroyed. What do you think about this one? Joker, you've played Thousand Suns, you've played Demons. How do you feel about this one?
I hate it. Well, it's Titan Hunter all over again. And I mean, you've mentioned my Chaos armies, but your Grey Knights, I think, suffer even more because the units that you want to take all have that Psychic keyword every day of the week. So, I mean, it's no risk and high reward, I would say. You take it and you max it out every time you play those 2 factions, mainly, I'd say. So Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, which I think shouldn't be the case because you're just punishing the way that those armies, those factions are designed, really, which is, I think, is not cool. I mean, it's good that there's at least some tax, but it's still very easy to max out.
In my opinion, it's not as bad as Titan Hunter, but right, this is punishing certain armies for their design.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
Grey
agree.
Knights and Demons.
I agree. I remember bringing that up in the Polish forums. I think in wh40k.pl, there was a discussion about what the WTC is doing or what the WTC is planning to do about the missions, and I think Tifus mentioned during either our podcast or on that forum that WTC is trying to come up with some alternative secondaries for the players to choose. Yeah, to do away with the ones that either don't work or just to provide extra alternatives or something. And there was a discussion among the national team representatives whether some objectives or some secondaries are good or not. And I remember that I posted there that I think that none of the secondaries should be an auto pick. So what I mentioned before, so Titan Slayer and Abhor the Witch, the two that are auto picks if you face certain armies. And I think it was Vlad who responded that it's not all that doom and gloom and that you can build a Grey Knights army that somehow, works around that and is not all psychers. And as much as I respect his opinion because he is, I think, one of the best players in Poland, I would really like to see a list that is a Grey Knight list that doesn't include many psychers and still is able to pull off a win. Because what would that be? Servitors? Rhinos?
And
Land
Rhinos.
Raiders? Probably.
Servitors and Storm Ravens.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe if
said,
he's listening, he can post it in the comments.
That's a fantastic suggestion. Or if our listeners can think of a list that can pull this off, I would be eager to find out. But yeah, as you said, it's Titan Hunter all over again with a slight tax. And actually, I like the fact that you cannot have a psyker to pick this one. Every time I see an enemy that is bringing a librarian or something like that, after the game, I really
You
want
laugh at him.
No, well, not maybe love, but I really want to buy that guy a beer just because, we're at the beginning of 9th edition and I'm already tired of hearing, so I've chosen X and I've chosen Y, and of course Abhor the Witch. I'm like a broken record here, but none of the objectives, sorry, why do I say objectives? None of the secondary missions should be like that. None of the secondary missions should be an auto pick for me. And this one absolutely is when you face Grey Knights and when you face Thousand Suns. And I don't want to say that it invalidates those armies, but those armies just start the game with a handicap. Rant over.
Yep.
Let's move on. Yeah, I think we feel the same about this one though. So moving on, we have mental interrogation. 3 victory points.
This one's a crap.
So let me say what it is first. So yeah, it turns out
Don't bother.
all of them are crap.
The verdict is there.
No, 3 victory points each time you successfully complete the following psychic action: mental interrogation. 1 psychic character unit from your army can attempt to perform this psychic action in your psychic phase if it is within 18 inches of any enemy's character models. And this mental interrogation is a spell. So it's in a psychic action or a spell. You need to cast this, and you cast this with a warp charge of 4.
And it can be denied.
Like any spell. Yep.
Like any spell. This is stupid. There are so many things you have to take in consideration before even trying to pick to cast it. You have to have a psyker, which will lose his all spells. He will be useless in this given psychic phase. You have to move this psyker in the range of 18 inches of enemy's character. You have to make a good roll, which will be hard to deny. And there are so many factors that can go wrong. This is totally useless, and there are only 3 points for it.
And there are so many. There are factions that can just point blank deny you this with a roll of a 4+, or even just using a structure.
I'm not sure that they can do this. because they can deny psychic. They can deny spy powers, not actions, with those stratagems and other abilities.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, I haven't heard that interpretation yet, so I would probably need to. I mean, you're the referee, so I guess you know what you're talking about.
would look on the wording of a given ability before placing a judgment.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because it's a psychic action, not a psychic. But yeah, actually,
That's psychic
interesting.
action, not psychic power. That's the difference.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I'll have to
And it's
investigate
not
that.
being manifested. It's an attempt to perform. So even
So
that's different.
we have some differences between casting and action.
Okay, yeah, that's something I will probably need to ask Dave or Tifus out of sheer curiosity, because
what is their point about this? I would like to have a discussion about it with them also.
Yeah, okay, so I guess this can be arranged. So yeah, okay, interesting, an interesting takeaway.
Nonetheless, it is shit. Totally utter shit. It's not undoable, unworthy. It just turns off your psyker. Of course, there are shitty psykers like in demon armies or in elder armies, which are cheap and can try to do this. But there are so many better uses for them than this one shitty objective.
So moving on, Psychic Ritual. You score 15 victory points at the end of the battle if any unit from your army successfully completed the following psychic action 3 times during the battle, and we have the psychic action called Psychic Ritual, War Charge 3. One psychic character unit from your army can attempt to perform this psychic action in your psychic phase if it is within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. I actually have thought a lot about this, and I played a test game where what I did was I took a unit of paladins and an apothecary. I dropped the apothecary at in the middle of the table, and then I gated the paladins around that apothecary, so he would be untargetable for any weapons. And then I started the psychic ritual, and I actually managed to do it, but I when I finished doing it, I was left with 2 paladins out of the 10, and my apothecary was on 1 last wound. And if you calculate how much points I've put into this is like paladins 528. Let's say the apothecary was bare bones, so 80, so 600 plus points to perform this this action 3 times and to score 15 points. So I have 2 questions here. Is Psychic Ritual itself, good, doable? Would you consider doing it? And second thing, how many points invested into doing a secondary is too much or too many?
Well, your army is not tailored for such a objective, in my opinion. It is this objective is fairly doable for armies like demons, where they can invest a third of the points you have invested and do the same thing. I mean, with a Poxbringer and 2 units of Nurglings. You can just throw them in the middle, and you will be able to do this action unless your opponent will commit a lot of effort to deny you this. And on some tables where there is a big loss blocking thing in the middle, you can pull this off with almost every psyker. So, considering the table, considering your opponent's army composition, it is pickable. It's not an auto pick. It can be done, in my opinion.
All right. I heard of of a player who actually did that with Greater Demons. And I know.
Yeah, I wonder who that is.
Yeah. So tell us all about it. Was it easy? Was it difficult? I think that was in a game against Space Marines, right? So how
Yeah,
did that
it was.
go for you?
It went fairly well. Well, I managed to pull it off, although I had to adapt. It wasn't. I didn't do it in the way I planned to, because, well, I made a positioning mistake with the Lord of Change, and he died before making the third cast of that psychic ritual. But because of a Thunderfire cannon sitting at the back of the board, my Keeper of Secrets was absolutely useless. So I thought, hey, why don't you try to pull off that psychic ritual afterwards? And because it doesn't have, well, enormous wings, it was a bit easier to hide, and I was able to pull it off. So that went okay-ish. But yeah, again, you could say I've committed 600 points towards that, but I still think it was fairly worth it.
Yeah, so I asked that question to some of the guys in our chat earlier today, and their answer was, why do you care? Like, as long as you're scoring that 15 points, it doesn't matter how many points you invest into actually doing that. So it could be 600, could be 700, as long as that 15 points is there. And especially those paladins that I mentioned, they they don't sit and like idle there. They actually have 4 side cannons and they can still shoot something, or if there is anything in the line of sight or something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, imagine
Yeah,
you could trade off 600 points from your list for 15 points secondary. So you have, if this was the possibility, you would have 45 from secondaries in exchange for the 1,800 points.
Mhm.
So fair, not fair.
Yeah, fair point.
But as I said, 600 insert of paladins with the apothecary, it isn't maybe the best way of doing this secondary. You can do it easy with cheaper units. Not in Grey Knights, of course, because you don't have cheap units.
Yeah,
But
thanks for nothing, mate.
but there are armies which can do this for, as I said, a third of those points.
Yeah,
For 200.
fairly cheap.
Yeah, Eldar. They have these warlocks which are 65. Nurgle armies, demon armies in general, they have those very cheap psychers. And when you have a cheap psyker who is not very contributive to the rest of your army, because he has one spell, blah blah blah, does not move very much, you can task him with this task, and he will make you those points. Just give him cover.
Yeah.
And there is another use of this secondary. You can make your opponent focus on this point.
On this unit that is trying to achieve that.
Yes. So you have something, anything different in mind. You don't want your opponent to be spread all over the place. You want him to focus. You want him to close his ranks, and you can provoke him with this.
Yeah, but then it's a two-edged sword, I think, because if this like psychic ritual has to be done by a character. So if you're sending a character there with a retinue of some sort, like a resilient retinue, let's say paladins, then the character is untargetable anyway, so they won't be firing at that. And seeing 10 paladins and a character that is a Terminator with 4+ invuln or 5+ invuln, but could be improved. Seeing something like that, I don't know if I wouldn't just forego shooting at that and just focus on the rest of the table and denying primaries.
Yes, but you're still hang on to only your list, paladins and tough characters. But when consider it with a warlock on a Wind Rider, on a bike, yeah?
Yep.
And a team of scouts
Yeah, of course.
in a building or behind the building, which is situated in the center of the battlefield. Look how you have 160 or less than 200 points in it. I'm sure of that it will be less than 200 points, like 150. You have a threat of gaining 15 points, and your opponent has to do something about it.
Yeah, they have to commit to that.
Yes, so he has to leave primary points to go to the center of the map and do something.
Agreed. Okay. Yeah. Fair point.
Another use of this of this secondary, when you are using a demon army or chaos army which can summon demons, you can in turn 1 start to do this. You just need 2 characters, one of them with a rule that allows you to summon demons twice. You make double summoning, you summon a character which is power level 4, 3, so it's auto pass, and some shitty unit of demons in the center of the battlefield, and start doing this ritual from the beginning of the game.
Are you sure you can do that after moving? Because I thought
Of course you can do
I thought
actions after
summoning
moving.
I thought summoning only works when you're not moving.
Yes, but there are abilities to allow you to do after moving.
Oh, fair enough.
And
Okay.
summon twice.
Okay, people, you heard it here first. All right. Okay, so yeah, very interesting take on this one. And the last one, I think that's the last one in general. So Pierce the Veil. You get 8 victory points at the end of the battle if 1 or more units from your army successfully completed the following psychic action twice or more times during the battle, or 15 victory points at the end of the battle if 1 or more units from your army successfully completed the following psychic action 4 times during the battle. And we have Pierce the Veil, Warp Charge 4. 1 psychic character unit from your army can attempt to perform the psychic action during your psychic phase if it is within 6 inches of your opponent's battlefield edge and more than 6 inches from any enemy models. Have you ever taken that?
No, because I haven't tailored my list for it. Because you have to have a tailored list for this secondary. You have to have a shitty, useless psyker who can suffer his casting phase for this secondary, and a very tough unit of bodyguards who will keep him alive for 4 rounds.
Okay.
Or
Like an apothecary and his retinue of paladins.
No. I think it is too costly. And when entire enemy army will be thrown on them, they won't be able to do this. But big unit of cultists or demons and some psyker, it's doable. It's doable. But I wouldn't be taking it every game. And it may be usable against an army which has not much number of units.
But has plenty of psychers because, you know, usually when you take a psyker in your army, it's because it has that one useful spell like Warp Time or something like that, and you really want to be casting that rather than
yes,
performing an action.
That's why I said you have to have a specially tailored build for this secondary.
Yeah.
So we are taking into consideration that this one psyker won't be casting. This psyker will be doing this secondary. And if your opponent has a small number of units, he won't be able to control the table, fight off the rest of your army, and at the same time prevent you from doing this.
Yep. Agreed. Joker, any thoughts on this one or any final thoughts on secondaries in general?
Oh, I can comment on Pierce the Veil. I mean, it could be a nice alternative to Psychic Ritual, but it's just not. I mean, why does it have to be a character? I mean, at this point, come on. one of these could be a mission that doesn't require a character to do it, just a psyker unit. And it's kind
How
of
many psyker units you have there apart from Grey Knights?
Demons.
well, my rubric marines, come on. If I'm giving away points for Abhor the Witch, I mean, they could at least do a psychic action or something.
I mean,
Yeah.
you do have brimstones,
Yeah,
you have horrors.
Guys, we have 24 or 5 armies. And only in 3 of them there are units that are psychers and are not Harkers. Grey Knights, Demons, and Thousand Suns.
Yeah, but first of all, they're my dudes, so I want the best for them.
Exactly.
Second of all, I'm getting kicked in the, I'm not gonna say where, by Abhor the Witch, so why wouldn't I be able to counter that by doing a psychic action with my, well, psyker unit, let's just say. But that's not the most
Because
important
GW
thing.
loves Marines, that's why.
Yes, and here he is, hatred incarnate of the Space Marines. But we digress. I think the worst thing about that Pierce the Veil is that it's investigate sites all over again, where an opponent can just move within 6 inches and not care any further about what you do. And well, supposedly, I think you're quite unlikely to be within your opponent's table edge with a psychic character on turn 1. So it's only enough for your opponent to block this action once and deny you the maximum points that you could get from that.
Yep.
So
It's
I think that
it is very hard to pull this off.
yeah,
very
for
hard.
maximum points. So I think that every day of the week you're better off just risking psychic ritual than trying to do this one.
Agreed.
It could be tailored, but not in the way you propose that this doesn't have to be a character. It could be like if you do this twice, you get the maximum. Because it's really hard to fend off enemies' attacks and keep him 6 inches from your psyker for 4 turns.
Especially in his own deployment zone.
Yeah, especially
that.
yeah, it is hard to do in your deployment zone and not to say in his.
Yep. Right. Okay. So I think we've covered all of those secondaries.
Yeah, in our longest episode yet.
I think so. Yes. But just to close it off, I think this has been confirmed that G-Dubs wants to release new secondaries that will be faction specific in the codexes. What do you think about that? So it's like with cards, but this time secondaries tailored for particular armies. What do you make of it?
I think there is plenty of room for the GW to fuck this up, which will they eventually do. And it will come that, as with faction-specific cards, for some factions their secondaries will be very hard to do, and for other factions they will be just auto picks. That is how I see it in the end.
So you're not looking forward to it?
No.
Joker?
Yeah, I think I mean, it would be nice, but I doubt it's gonna be super balanced. So, well, I'm not writing them off right away, but yeah, I'm not being too optimistic either.
I think they should focus more on balancing the game, not to break it even further with new things, which are, in my opinion, play-tested. Not.
Not painstakingly.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the most laughable quote from GW, I think.
So to close off this episode, Elth, I'll address this last question to you first. Any advice?
I thought you wanted to close off.
Any advice? Just one piece of advice for our listeners on how to efficiently choose secondaries. Any good practices that you do before a battle?
Okay, just to summarize. you have to keep in mind what are you going to do in the battle? What are your units able to achieve? And in the same time, you have to take into consideration what your opponent could do to your army and on the battle in the battle in general, and tailor the list in such a way that you won't be giving your opponent auto picks from secondaries. So just don't take 5 tanks. That is the general rule. Tailor the list in a way that you will have some certain points, no matter what your enemy will do, and that you're denying him maxes on secondaries. That he will have the problem, what do I have to take to fight this guy? You just look at the secondaries and tailor the list that no matter what he will choose, he won't have max, won't have ability to score max points.
Yep, sounds like a reasonable piece of advice. Joker?
I think Elth has said it all. I mean, just focus on your army's strengths and work with that. And if you happen to be in a situation where you are giving away a lot of points to your opponent because of taking too many tanks or something, just make sure you score more than him.
Okay. And for my piece of advice, first of all, read the missions closely. If you haven't played many games already, make sure that you understand what the mission is. Read what the actions mean and what you can do and what you cannot do, because there are some interesting caveats in those action descriptions. Like if you were doing something with a character, if you're performing an action, you cannot do anything else with that character, for example, and that includes using the auras. So if you're counting on those precious rerolls from a character, but you want to perform an action with that character, it can so happen that he won't be able to grant you those rerolls in that particular turn because you're performing an action. So keep that in mind. And if you're unsure, make sure you check the rulebook, check the mission description, because the worst thing that can happen, I think, is when your opponent catches you red-handed, not knowing the rules properly or not knowing the missions properly. So keep that in mind as well. This is a piece of advice that goes to, I think, the beginners and also to the pro players, because sometimes even the pro players can forget that Engage on All Fronts has this caveat of those 6 inches within the middle of the board. So read the missions closely. All right. We are finishing the episode now. So my question to our listeners, please leave a comment, let us know, or comment on Facebook or on the forums. Would you like us to cover the mission secondaries as well? If we receive enough encouragement to do that, we will, and then we can do a separate episode on the mission secondaries, building lists, like particular lists for particular factions for mission scoring and for doing secondaries. So if you're interested in that, please do let us know, and we will make a separate episode just for that, just for you. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you, Elth. Thank you, Joker.
It was a pleasure.
And likewise. And until next time.